How's it going, everybody? Recording our first best ball video of the season. So this is the Underdog Big Board 50K, which is a tournament style. And we got pick number 8, which means I'll probably be hoping for a Travis Kelce or Jonathan Taylor, but not too sure we'll be that lucky. Probably not. Pick number 8 is kind of rough. So, what has changed since last year to this year? Well, I've gotten in 10 of these drafts already before recording this video this year. And I've also done some more research into the tournament winning rosters for different Underdog tournaments and a couple other sites. But I'm mainly sticking just to Underdog this year. I might do some DraftKings because the fields are so weak there. But if they do best ball again, which I'm not sure they're going to do after they had to scramble to get participants last year. So there are a few things we're changing strategy-wise, which I'll get into a bit more as we after we make our 2 picks for round 1 and round 2. So there's a podcast out there on Establish the Run that features Justin Herzig, who is one of the best ball players that there is right now. He won the 200K Underdog tournament last year, and I listened to that and trying to pick up some information from there, as well as looking at rosters. So that's a good podcast to check out if you're really interested in being competitive at best ball. The highlights for you are that in these tournament styles, he drafts 3 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends, which is something I pretty much was on last year. But I'm only going to draft 3 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends this year. I'm not going to ever take 3 tight ends this year. We're going to get probably snaked on Kelce here and have a pretty tough pick. I think we're going to take Devonta Adams if Kelce goes, which I would suspect to be the case. Ooh, he takes Devonta Adams. Nice. So we get Kelce here at 8, which is great. Kelce was the highest win percentage player last year. Of course, he had a second-round ADP, and now he is in round between 1-6 and 1-9 he goes. So the higher an ADP goes, if he were to have the same season, it would lower his win percentage a bit, but still by far the best player at his position. And since we are only going to take 2 tight ends, it's really, really nice to get Kelce. We just take a later tight end and all set on that position. So we're going to be going 3 QBs this year. Last year, I was switching between 3 QBs or 3 tight ends. The reason why we're going to go solid 3 QBs, it just like if you have something go wrong where you miss a week and you miss a QB week, it's so big because, your QB weeks are 15, 20, 30 points sometimes, whereas a tight end week, with the exception of, the couple top guys, you're missing out on like 8 points or whatever. Now, in these tournaments, like you're playing week 1 through 13, and you have to win your division, your draft, to come out to get into a winners group, and then another winners group, and then the final group. So it's, week 13, your league ends, then week 14, you play another league, week 15, you play another league, and then week 16 is the free-for-all for the championship. So because you have less weeks, where you only have 13 instead of like 16 if you were doing a full season best ball, you really, really can't afford to miss a QB week. It's really disastrous. So that's why we're going to be going 3 QBs. That was one thing I picked up from listening to the podcast and Justin. So we will not be doing 3 tight ends at all this year. So we were also taking 6 running backs, 7 wide receivers last year, which again offers you the highest win percentage in your original pod of 13 weeks. So there's nothing wrong with going with 6 running backs and 7 wide receivers. You will profit the most in your first grouping by having that roster construction weeks 1 through 13. This year, I'm switching to only taking 5 running backs and 8 wide receivers. Here I'm probably going to take a running back because I don't want to not take a running back in the first 2 rounds. It's between Swift and Dobbins for me. I'm going to take Swift because I think he's going to get a ton of usage this year. I think with Detroit having a lack of weapons, they're really, really going to have to rely on Swift. And I like Dobbins too, but he doesn't get as many touches. So I think it's reasonable between either of those two. So getting back, we're going to go with 5 running backs and 8 wide receivers. And the reason is, another thing I picked up from the podcast and by studying the rosters of the championship teams, is most of the championship teams actually had less running backs than 6. And the reason why it doesn't really matter is because if you start to suffer significant losses at running back, 2 of your top 3 running backs go down, or 3 of your top 4 running backs go down, guess what? You're fucked. It doesn't matter that you had 6 running backs. You're just not winning. You need the running back luck to go in your favor to have a shot to win one of these tournaments. You have to have the running back luck. So if you're going to do that, you need to set your team up so that you have the best chance to win, assuming that you get the running back luck, which you will get if on some teams if you draft enough, right? Because not everybody's going to get hurt. Kind of everybody got hurt last year, it felt like. But so that's the theory behind that. So Justin's team that won the 200K actually only had 4 running backs on it, which that's probably a bridge too far for me, and that didn't sound like that was his normal roster construction to only have 4. So we're going to be sticking with 5 this year. That's what I would recommend. If you want to try 4, go nuts. But that seems like a very small, couple week injury to one of your guys could start to really affect your team and you getting through the 13. And I don't want to put myself in that situation. I do think that it's correct to lower your win percentage a tiny bit on, weeks 1 through 13. You are giving up a little bit having that one less running back, but you're gaining a much better chance to actually win the entire championship. So another thing we've learned, something we were getting into a bit last year, if anybody followed me, was being a little bit less obsessed with the stacking. It gotten to the point where, I was making a few bad choices as far as players just because I wanted stacks and just overvaluing stacking in general. Looks like we're going to get a pretty good pick here at 3.8. So we were overvaluing stacking a bit. So I'm going to ease off a bit. You still want to make sure you have stacking in your lineups, but it can't be your number one priority. It's going to be interesting here. So between Najee Harris and CEH. Well, I'm actually going to take CEH here because I've been taking so much Najee Harris. I do think that those two are close. We got CEH and we have Travis Kelce. So that's interesting. Be a little bit on our radar if Mahomes gets to us in round 4, but I'm very, very much trying to avoid taking a quarterback before round 6. Looking at the win percentage for quarterbacks now over 3 seasons, taking a quarterback before round 6 has been fucking disastrous. It's been bad. It's because of how volatile the position is and the up and down. So if you were to take Mahomes in round 3 or 4, right, he basically has to be the QB1 if nobody else is taking one till round 6, or else you're in fucking deep shit. If say Dak and Kyler, or Watson and Kyler, or Josh Allen and Kyler both end up going, if some of those guys end up going in round 6 and they do as well as Mahomes, which is quite reasonable, then you just took a huge value loss picking a QB as early as round 4 compared to their round 6. Now, in some of these drafts, a bunch of these guys go earlier, but a bunch of them sometimes go in round 4 and yada yada. But the win percentages last year on Lamar Jackson, who went in round 3, was 2.3%, which is fucking terrible. And the win percentage for Patrick Mahomes was in the 4% range, which is absolutely terrible. So outside of maybe the odd time where we're going to be stacking a Mahomes with a Kelsey or a Mahomes with a Tyreek, we're pretty much never going to own any Mahomes other than those situations. And like even in that situation, like we had Kelsey there, I would not take Mahomes in round 3. And round 4 is the absolute earliest you can consider taking Mahomes, in my opinion. So it'd be interesting to see here if he falls to us. Pretty good with it either way. Interesting. So as much as I'm saying I do not want to be getting too much Patrick Mahomes, this is the 4-5, and we do already have 2 Chiefs, so I am going to take him this time. And this is only my second share of Patrick Mahomes, so not too worried about it. But generally, you really do not want to be selecting Patrick Mahomes. Like the only times you're going to make exceptions are like if you've got Tyreek Hill or Kelsey. I mean, it's not that you don't want Patrick Mahomes. You just don't want to pay the price that the price is for Patrick Mahomes. So if you got a Kelsey or if you got a Hill in round 1, 2, and Mahomes is there in round 4, that's like the earliest I think you can look at him. You'll never get him in round 5. So basically that's going to be the only time you can get him. Generally, we are waiting until round 6 to take a quarterback. See, Allen went here at the 4-8. It's weird how some of these drafts go. Some people are pretty strict with waiting on QB, and other people, once they see one go, they're like, oh, I'll just grab the next QB. So I've seen a lot of range in where these QBs have been taken. So another thing I want to talk about here is rookies in these early best ball drafts. So we got no bye weeks. We know that. So you can't do anything to help yourself there. Everyone's in the same situation. So what can you do about it? Nothing. Don't worry about it. So the rookies also, the rookie QBs right now, the only one I'm really that interested in drafting in one of these early drafts before we have landing spots is Trevor Lawrence. Because you know Trevor Lawrence is going to Jacksonville, and you know Trevor Lawrence is starting week 1. And, like, there's too much... Like, we know Trey Lance probably is not starting week 1. So, in a 13-week best ball where you got to win your division, you do not want any players that are going to be taking zeros if you can avoid it. Like, even Will Fuller, I'm significantly discounting on this because he's going to have suspension. Melvin Gordon's another player that could be looking at suspension. But as far as quarterbacks go, these rookie quarterbacks, I don't think there's any chance that Trey Lance starts week 1. And obviously Zach Wilson and Justin Fields have a chance they could start week 1. But if either of them, we don't know who's going to go to where, right? And like whichever one could end up with the Falcons at 4, that guy probably isn't going to start week 1 now. So because we don't know who that is, I'm just going to avoid both of them for this time. Like the upside of where they get picked, the risk is not worth the reward. Like, you're not getting that much reward. They're just good picks at their value if they end up starting. And if they don't end up starting, you're completely screwed. So far, I think the only other quarterback that's went off the board was Allen. Interesting. A.J. Dillon at 5-1 and Devonta Williams at 4-12. That's higher than I've seen both those guys going. Both taken by the same guy. I actually have a lot of ownership on both those players. So I'm going to peek in at running back a bit. It doesn't look like there's much. That was Kyler. So we're going to either be taking T. Higgins or Chase Claypool. I'm just peeking over here to see what's going on. I've been able to get more Claypool in this, so I'm going to take T. Higgins this time. I've got a few Claypool shares and no Higgins. Cup I like there. Chark I like there. Just Cortland Sutton. There's so many good wide receivers this year. Every year there's more and more. So as far as the rookie running backs go, Etienne and Javonte Williams went way higher in this draft than other ones I've seen. I haven't drafted for a couple days, so maybe that's an adjustment that the field has made. But by looking at the ADPs on here, I don't think that that's the case. Whitehorse has drafted only running backs so far. Interesting. Zeke Eckler, David Montgomery, Najee Harris. Well, that's quite a group. If he drafts 0 more running backs the rest of this draft, that strategy might be okay. But I don't really like starting with 4 running backs. I don't mind starting with 3. 4 is a little excessive. But I do think if he were to draft now 0 more running backs the rest of the way, that might work out for him. So running backs on the way back for us, we were interested in are probably only really Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones is a much better best ball player than he is an actual dynasty and or redraft player, because the weeks that he gets a bunch of carries, he's going to score a bunch, and then there'll be weeks where they fucking don't use him at all, because that's what Bruce Arians does. So he's a super frustrating dynasty / redraft own, but he's a significantly better best ball own. There's tons of good wide receivers that I really like in this range too, so we're not necessarily going to go with a running back. We might wait another round. Really like Chark and Sutton. I think if those two go, then we're probably going to go with Ronald Jones. Was not Chark and Sutton, so that's good. Chase, that's a bit early for me. Oof, now we get to pick between the two. All right, I'm going to go with Chark and the Trevor Lawrence connection there. So we've built out a pretty balanced roster through the first 6 rounds here. We've got 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end and QB. One of the value so I was talking about the rookie running backs there. They were all pretty good values, but looks like things might be changing there. Najee was going late round 3 the last I was doing these drafts. Etienne was going in round 5, and Devonta wasn't going until round 6 or 7. So they all went much higher in this draft. So when I record another video, that's something we'll look out for. Like, is their ADP rising, or is this just this one person took them early in this draft? Some other good value players I like are Daniel Jones at quarterback and Jalen Hurts at quarterback. But for me, I'm not going to be able to take Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz in these next few drafts. So I drafted a bit of them because it sounded like Carson Wentz was going to get traded, which then, made them both pretty good picks at where their value is. But now that we don't know if Carson Wentz is getting traded again, I'm just avoiding that situation, because if Wentz is to stay in Philly and starts the first few weeks, even if he was to lose his job at that point to Hurts, that would be a lot of Hurts taking like 2 or 3 zeros before that happened. It would make him a terrible pick at his ADP. So if any of the winds blow again, where it's like, oh my God, he might get traded again, then I'm back on the Hurts train. But you have to pick Hurts. I mean, look at Hurts. He went 7-1. You have to take him really high to get him. So if there's any ambiguity to that situation, then I don't want to be involved in it. So I'm pretty interested in Ronald Jones and Melvin Gordon, even though Melvin Gordon possibly could be facing a suspension. Doesn't sound like he is gonna be, because he got the charges reduced, but never know with the NFL. It's gonna be doing a dance if this guy picks somebody that is not Ronald Jones. Fournette, I think, is reasonable too, but less good than Melvin Gordon, so that's pretty good for us. Do not love Ronald Jones in general, but I do like him quite a bit in best ball compared to in other drafts. Some other guys I like at value at running back are Damian Williams, who we'll be avoiding in this draft because I don't draft 2 running backs from the same backfield. It's too much downside week to week. But I do like Damian Williams a lot. He's already said he's opted in for this year. And when you look at the things that Clyde struggled at, it wasn't very good on the goal line. Damian Williams was pretty good on the goal line. He wasn't good at creating explosive plays in the pass game, which a lot of people will be like, well, he had caught all those passes in his senior year in college, or his final year in college anyway. With Burrow, he's like a big-time pass catcher, right? Well, during that time, he never caught a pass. He didn't have a reception of over 30 yards. Damian Williams has proven to be pretty explosive in the pass-catching game. So even though Clyde catches passes and can catch passes, he just doesn't accomplish a whole bunch when he does it. And I'm not sure how excited the team is going to be to get the ball back into his hands, like when he's not creating those big plays. I think that they would rather throw to Damian Williams. So the combination Damian Williams, I think, could, mix in on the goal line and also pass catching. Now that doesn't mean you have to like fade Clyde. Clyde's ADP is pretty reasonable. It's fallen back. His guy was going 1-6 last year. That was absurd. So with his ADP falling back, you don't need to avoid Clyde. But I do think you need to pick Damian as well, because not in the same draft, but have shares of Damian as well on other teams. Just think he's a really good value. You can get him in like the last 3 or 4 rounds, and I think that him and Clyde are gonna be in complementary roles. And in best ball, you don't have to try to figure out what weeks are who's weak, which is good. Jeff Wilson, another guy I was going to bring up, just went. Like him a good bit if San Francisco doesn't add any running backs, which we don't really know is going to happen yet in the draft or not. Bringing back in the other positions to take a look at what we've got. Good Cooks. Right now, I got kind of my eye on Jarvis Landry. Damien Harris is somewhat interesting if he were to end up as kind of the 1A for New England. There's a pretty significant drop-off from both. Landry was really, really good after those few weeks where there was all the rainstorms and shit. He had like 3 weeks in a row where Cleveland played at home last year, and those were some tough weeks for him because they played 3 weeks in a row at home where there was torrential downpours, and the passing games for both teams in those games just did fucking nothing. So we're going to grab us some Jarvis there. We'll take a look at some positions. Still tons of good quarterbacks left. So now, like we're a little bit further. We got our Mahomes stack. We can at least start considering, what can we do for stacks later on? Like, could put Lawrence with DJ Chark. Could put Mayfield with our Jarvis Landry pick we just made. But we're not going to worry about it too much. We're just being conscious of it. I really like Daniel Jones at his ADP. This guy, his rookie year, had 4 weeks as quarterback 1 or quarterback 2. And last year with the injury sapping his running ability at the end of the year, definitely a big time down year. But I assume that the Giants are going to add a big time wide receiver either through free agency or the draft. And you don't see quarterbacks that have that sort of upside much, where you're talking about 4 weeks in the top 2. So I definitely understand that Daniel Jones is pretty risky, but I love his upside over like some of these other players in here. Ben's obviously still got his huge weak upsides, but I'd much rather have Daniel Jones than Carson Wentz, Tua, Carr. I'd much rather have him than Fields. I'd rather have him than Kirk Cousins. I'd probably rather have him than Baker, but Baker did have some huge weeks at the end last year. So going back to RB, guys I have a little bit of interest in: Damian Harris, tiny bit in Zach Moss. I actually have a little interest in Chuba, despite not liking Chuba very much. The thing is, if he gets into the miracle spot of landing with a San Francisco or Arizona, then he's going to be really, really good. And I realize it's only a couple landing spots, but just I think that his absolute ceiling scenario is very high. And also I think his average scenario is pretty low. So you don't want to have a lot of Chuba. You don't want to have a high ownership percentage on him, but you definitely don't want to have zero ownership on him either. Wide receivers, Devonta Smith and Waddle. 2 rookies are the most interesting to me. Also Bateman. I would rather wait around and go for Bateman than grab one of those guys at tight end. There's 2 tight ends on here. Really, really like their upsides for this year. And they're guys that I've traditionally avoided in the past. That's Mike Gesicki and Tyler Higbee. I will get into them a bit more after I make my pick. There goes Smith. So we could take Trevor Lawrence and put him with Shark. I think with our top quarterback being Mahomes and with some of the guys lower out there, I don't think we need to do that. I haven't really gotten to take much Damian Harris yet, so I'm going to go ahead and grab a share of him. He's generally went higher than ADP in most of the drafts I've done, and this one, I'm drafting him right at ADP, so interesting group of running backs there, that's for sure. So we're only going to draft one more running back in this one, and we don't need to do it particularly soon. Antonio Brown. Pitts is a little bit too high for me, even though I completely understand. I have actually gotten some of them because I've done a few drafts where he's went way after ADP. So those are the times I've grabbed him. All right, getting back to Higbee and Gesicki. The reason why these 2 guys, if you've followed any of my videos for the last 2 years, these are 2 guys I've just generally not been interested in. So why am I interested in him now? Well, Gesicki I wasn't interested in, not because of himself, but because Ryan Fitzpatrick just doesn't throw to tight ends. It was known, and we had years and years of data behind it. So, he still would have those boom weeks every now and then. But, with Fitzpatrick there, they were too few and too far between. So I was really just not that into it. Now that it's Tua seemed to like Gesicki quite a bit, peppered him, and he's still going to have his bum games. It seems like even with Tua, he's going to have some pretty bad games. But, this is best ball, and those do not hurt you as much here as they do in a dynasty or a redraft. And with Higbee, they got Stafford coming in, who I think is a pretty decent size upgrade over Goff. They might have Gerald Everett going out. So it sounds like Gerald Everett is going to be gone. And if that's the case, that is a huge step up for Higbee. So I definitely don't want to take another running back just this soon after we just took that one. Take a look at QBs. We still got Baker, Daniel Jones. I'd be pretty comfortable with either one of those. Wide receivers getting a slightly thin, but not too bad. Tight end, I think Gesicki is definitely my favorite tight end on the board. But quite a bit. I do like Gesicki more than Higbee. So I'm going to go ahead and take Gesicki here and be all done with my tight ends. I think he's going to be a guy that can definitely get into your flex spot in weeks. The weeks that he hits, if Gesicki has a big hit week and Kelsey has a big hit week, they're both just going to end up in your lineup. You don't really have to worry about getting blocked out there. So next we're going to be either looking at wide receiver or quarterback for sure. So we're not taking any more tight ends. We're going to hope Kelsey and Gesicki do not end up with the same bye week. If they do, they do. That's the way the cookie crumbles. And not terribly interested in running back at the moment. So we're definitely looking for either quarterback or wide receiver. So we'll take running back off there. I have a lot of interest in Baker and or Daniel Jones right now. I have a tiny interest in Tua now because I at least have a stack piece for him. Quite a bit of interest in Rashad Bateman, but I don't expect that he will last long enough for us to get him. I like Mims and Kirk and still Marvin Jones, Rondell Moore. So I think I'd rather take a quarterback and then try to take Rondell Moore with the pick after than take Bateman and try to take a quarterback after. Quarterbacks tend to go in some runs here, and I really would like to get one of their Bateman, so that's not really not an issue, not going to be a choice. So I'm kind of hoping one of Baker or Daniel Jones makes it to us to take as our second quarterback. then be jumping into the wide receiver probably the next round. Is Chuba still on the board? No, that's good. Michael Carter's another rookie running back I have interest in if he was to end up in a good situation. Ramondre Stevenson's a rookie running back I have a bit of interest in. Kylan Hill, tiny bit, but I don't really want too much ownership on him. Sermon, tiny bit. Sermon feels like a flash in the pan type of a guy, but you never know. He really did dominate when he got his chance, so. Oh, Baker, that's tough. I was hoping to get him to go with our Jarvis, but not too big of a deal. We are definitely hoping that this guy doesn't steal Daniel Jones for us. Yes. So this time, even though I have Tua and I could put Tua with Gesicki, I'm going to take Daniel Jones. I just think his ceiling is so much higher that I'm not going to worry about stacking in that instance. I've got some stack pieces, and I just want the guy with more upside, which I think is Daniel Jones. So that's a spot where last year I would have taken a guy that I could be stacking, and this time I'm not. So I take Daniel Jones pretty high above his ADP, but I'm pretty comfortable with that. There's not a lot of real good quarterback picks left, that's for sure. So we're probably going to be looking to add our third quarterback in the next couple rounds. We definitely don't need tight end. So some receivers I think are good at value. I think a lot of the rookie receivers are undervalued as to where they're going to get drafted. Some of the guys I like particularly are the ones that are a little bit cheaper than the top two. So Smith and Chase, they go probably about where they're going to go after they have landing spots. But Bateman, Rondell Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tylan Wallace, all those Waddle, those guys all go, a bit later than I will expect them to go once they have landing spots. A few other guys I like at their draft spots. For vets, I really like Jarvis Landry and Devonta Parker. These are guys that are probably going to be their team's wide receiver ones for the year. And I think that they go a little later than they should in these drafts. And a few more guys I like the value on. Jacoby Myers. I keep screwing this up. Get out of there. All right. So I have some interest in Christian Kirk or Rondell Moore as far as wide receivers go. I'm going to wait another round for a quarterback and take one of these guys. It's also Marvin Jones. We don't know what team he's going to be on. I really haven't taken much for Rondell Moore yet, so I'm going to take him. I have taken a good amount of Christian Kirk. Went the next pick. So that was a spot if I had already had Kyler, I would have taken Christian Kirk there because it was a virtual tie to me, unlike the Daniel Jones Tua situation. So we could look to add a wide receiver to go with Daniel Jones, maybe a Slayton or Sterling Shepard if they're there when we pick again. We might decide to take a quarterback with our next pick because quarterbacks thin out real quick and we want to get three. And in these drafts, you don't have as much depth at quarterback as you're going to later on because there's so many ambiguous situations that we're trying to avoid. We'd rather avoid Wentz for the moment. We'd rather avoid any of the rookie quarterbacks not named Trevor Lawrence for the moment. Washington doesn't have a quarterback at the moment. The Colts don't have a quarterback at the moment. So there's just like a ton of situations where you don't really know what you're doing. I'd still be comfortable with like Carr, Tua, Ben, which are all on the board. They all have pretty decent upsides too. Wide receivers, a little bit interested in Ruggs. Definitely some interest in Sterling Shepard. I'd probably rather like pass Sterling Shepard and take a quarterback and then maybe hope to grab Slayton in the next round. Because I think there's only 3 or 4 quarterbacks left that I really have interest in. 1, 2, 3. I have some interest in Goff because I think he'll start for the Lions. I don't really want any of these Saints guys. I don't want Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't want Teddy. I don't want Newton. Don't really want Drew Lock. Don't want Sam Darnold. So it is tough going at quarterback late in these drafts. So still comfortable with Tua, Ben. Well, now Ben and Goff. So if those 2 go, it's going to get interesting. Okay, Sterling Shepard one. That's all right. So yeah, just from a lack of me liking any of these, like I don't have any idea which Saints. I'm a Saints fan. I have no clue which guy the Saints are going to end up going with. I think that they'd like to go with Winston, but there's other suitors out there for Winston, so there's no guarantee that they get Winston back. Goff or Ben? Well, we don't have any pieces that go with either. I definitely have way more Goff than I have Ben in these, so we'll take a Ben. So now we're only be drafting wide receiver or running back for the rest of the way. Our wide receivers are Higgins, Chark, Landry, and Moore. Not too bad. I would say that is, this is a pretty weak wide receiver group compared to what I would like, but I mean, that's because we have Travis Kelce. So pretty much anytime you take Kelce in round 1, your wide receiver group ends up a little weaker. But we're going to end up having 8 of them, which will be nice. Do need to take one more running back, so we should at least scout out what's going on there. This is a spot where I would normally love to hammer Damian Williams. I really don't want to have Damian Williams and Clyde, so probably avoid him. Maybe wait and take like a Phillip Lindsay or a Ramondre Stevenson. James White, obviously, is an okay PPR back. Not too much down here I love. Don't mind like Sony Michel as like a last round pick if you get kind of blocked out, but I wouldn't take him on this team because I have Damien Harris. It's Tariq. I don't think Todd Gurley is going to find a job this year, but I guess we'll see. Ramondre Stevenson's a pretty interesting one to me. He's got that like 3 down ability, and if he were to run a decent 40, you could really see him get day 2 draft capital, which then you'd have a good shot at getting playing time right away. I don't hate Darrell Henderson either, though he did get kind of phased out at the end there. Yeah, Wentz and Goff went, so I'm glad we took Ben when we took him and kind of got in before the super slim pickings came. This is going to be a tough next pick. All right. I'm going to take Darius Slayton because I don't really have any of him yet, and I have Daniel Jones. It's only my second share. There's like definitely arguments for a lot of these guys that are behind him just having like way higher ceilings. But I'm going to go with Slayton this time. Slayton's another guy that's going to be pretty much better in best ball than your regular style leagues. RBs on my radar right now are Darrell Henderson and Stevenson. I think I would prefer Stevenson. There's just like more upside to like the different things that could happen to make him good. But there's also, still like Devin Singletary and guys like that on the board. So not like and Philip Lindsay. I'm not really in like a rush to make that RB pick right away. There's still quite a few dudes out there I like. Here goes Damian Williams. He's a guy I'd take around 15, 14, quite a bit. Singletary, Philip Lindsay. Jarwin, huh? I don't really know what's going to happen with the Dallas tight end situation. Jarwin's getting paid a bunch of money, but Dalton Schultz played pretty good. And, it's Dallas, so maybe they'll draft Pitts around one. Who knows? They tend to draft things that they don't need just because. So you kind of focus on RB just to see what is going to be left. See how likely we are to have someone come back to us. So we're going to have like 8 picks until we pick again. Schultz and Jarwin in this couple of picks away from each other. I don't like that much. Love the Terrace Marshall pick. He's a guy I've been getting a lot of, so I'm fine not getting another share. I like Paris Campbell and Jacoby Myers quite a bit. I'm like, on James Washington. I don't mind Hamler in best ball because, those big plays. He was actually on the team that won the 200K because he had a good week in week 16. I like Tylan Wallace and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're like really good values. I still am falling into this Bryan Edwards trap a bit too, but I've been taking him a good bit, so I wouldn't hate not taking him for a while. So I still do like Henderson. Don't hate Singletary and Lindsay and Stevenson. So I'm probably going to let running back go one more round and see what falls to us, which means we will pick our favorite wide receiver out of this groove. Who is that? I think it's Tylan Wallace. This dude's a beast, man. It's going to be a really, really, really good rookie. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown too. You really can't be too worried about taking these rookie wide receivers and running backs. I mean, just some guys super break out, and those are the guys that are really going to help you in a best ball type of league. Last year T. Higgins was a guy people were avoiding. He went around 16, 17, 18, even sometimes in my best ball drafts. So I got a good bit of him, and he smashed. I also got a good bit of people like Bryan Edwards. So it's a give and take. You will not be hitting on all those type of players, but the impact of when you do hit a guy that's talented and gets opportunity that wasn't expected, more opportunity than was expected, they can really help you win big. So we got a couple stack pieces, which isn't terrible. We got, our Mahomes and Clyde and Travis Kelce. Got Daniel Jones and Slayton. Probably going to be leaning towards taking the running back with our next pick because there's too many picks before we pick again. Not that many running backs on the left that I like. So counting off, there's really only 3 guys that I'm super interested in. So I'm hoping one of those 3 gets to us. That is Henderson, Lindsay, or Stevenson. If Mike Davis we knew was going to be back in Carolina, he would be on the list, but we don't know where he is going to play. Might be like my 4, maybe James White. I don't like the upside of a James White. But, I mean, sometimes you just got to get a guy that's going to actually, do things. And he is a guy that will actually do things. Lindsay could have, a pretty decent role he's a free agent too. But I don't think the market for him is going to be that big. And I think Denver will want him back. So I would suspect that he stays. So right now my list of running backs are 1 Stevenson, 2 Lindsay, 3 Darrell Henderson, 4 Kylan Hill. So Stevenson would be my choice, but I do have a lot of ownership shares of Stevenson, so I am going to take Philip Lindsay this time, even though I would have Stevenson ranked higher. This is just a ownership thing. I don't really have much ownership on Philip Lindsay, and I have like a ton of ownership on Stevenson because I've been hammering him in these like last 3 rounds. So if you had none, if like this was your first draft, I would take Stevenson there. I just think the upside is bigger and better. But, there's always a chance like Melvin Gordon does something else stupid this summer and Denver re-signs Lindsay, or the Melvin Gordon could end up suspended 4 games. Really don't know. This is my first Philip Lindsay share, so that was the modus behind that choice. So we still have 2 more picks to go. Going to be adding our wide receivers 7 and 8. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is definitely on my radar. I don't really like too many of the wide receivers like lower than him, like the Seth Williams, Mark Rogers, Tutu. I just don't know if any, like they're too low percentage to get big roles. Tamorian Terry is one guy that I don't mind. Like that dude is a freaking unit, and if he gets a role in the NFL, like there's some chance he could destroy. He was pretty bad his senior year, but he was also playing through a significant injury, and the year before he had absolutely crushed. So Tamorian Terry is a guy I want to get like a few shares of. Tony is interesting. Not a guy I like that much, but I also have like very low ownership, so that makes him a little interesting. Bryan Edwards, I've taken too much of. I gotta fade him for a bit. Traquan is a bit interesting. And N'Keal Harry, fuck no. Rather lose than win with N'Keal Harry at this point. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is just the best pick on the board, but quite a large margin, so can go with that. Stacking up them rookie wide receivers. Interesting. I don't think I've had 3 on too many of my teams, but really not too scared of it. Like I said, like this is kind of like how you gotta find value in places and get lucky to win these big tournaments, and taking fucking like who was I thinking of? Hunter Renfrow is just not going to do much for you. Like taking Bryan Edwards there would be fine, but I have too much ownership on him. I got to fade him for a bit. Like a guy like Hunter Renfrow that's just going to like be a steady Eddie, get you some points here and there, over taking one of these higher upside rookie wide receivers. The style of player when you've got 8 wide receivers, it just really doesn't help you much. Like he literally will probably get in 1 week for you into your lineup. Another guy I kind of like is Anthony Miller down here. I know last year was just absolutely brutal for him. 2 brutal years in a row after what looked like a very, very promising rookie campaign where he had 7 touchdowns. The prospect of Allen Robinson leaving could get more opportunity. The problem is like Darnell Mooney kind of already passed him, so tempted to take Tamorian Terry with my last pick, and now fucking 4 rookie wide receivers would be interesting. Well, I really think he's the type of guy that could absolutely smash in the right spot. This guy's like big and fast, like only Calvin Johnson and Chase Claypool before him. He is that large and that fast. a year ago, he was clocked on a college field running faster than Tyreek Hill. Like as far as miles per hour, not 40 time. But he was clocked at like 23.6 miles per hour. He is absolutely large, beastly human. All right, we're going to do it. It's round 18. Go max upside. So I wouldn't recommend leaving your draft with 4 rookie wide receivers, but that is what happened in this one. Partially was we were making a couple of picks based on the fact that we're trying to get ownership percentages down on a few guys. So, like mainly Brian Edwards here, because like I normally would never let him pass me in round 18, but I think I'm up to like 3 times the field on him. And after he burned my ass last year, I'm definitely I'm still like not fading him, but I'm gonna try to keep him at like 2 times the field. So we got a bunch of rookie wide receivers. We got a little stacking. We've got our Kelsey. Got an interesting group of running backs. This is definitely not like any of my group of running backs have looked like before. And a very strong quarterback group. I think anytime you draft Travis Kelce, your team ends up just looking a little bit weird. So of the rookie wide receivers, basically there's like 7 rookie wide receivers I'm pretty comfortable with. Or sorry, 8 wide receivers? Yeah, 8. So I'm pretty comfortable drafting and thinking that they will get some sort of role in offenses. Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Rashad Bateman, Jalen Waddle, Rondale Moore, Terrace Wallace, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Tylan Moss. So that's 8 guys. So those 8 guys I almost don't really consider rookie wide receivers because I don't think that there's the same level of risk of them having like no role. Like Morgan and Terry definitely has a massive risk of having no role. But the other 3 rookie wide receivers we took in that draft, I didn't really feel that way. All right. Well, good luck, folks, and enjoy your drafting.